The rooftop garden overlooked the sparkling skyline, where successful people laughed over expensive lunches and celebrated million-dollar deals. Yet every single afternoon, one woman sat completely alone. She wore elegant business suits, carried the confidence of a leader, and controlled one of the city's largest technology companies. But the expensive wheelchair beneath her table seemed to create an invisible wall that no one dared cross. Employees greeted her politely from a distance, clients admired her success, but when lunchtime arrived, every chair around her remained painfully empty. Then, on one ordinary afternoon, a little girl carrying a peanut butter sandwich changed everything. Before we begin, if you believe kindness still has the power to change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel, Spread Love Daily. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world compassion still exists. Every weekday at exactly 12:30, Marin Holloway rolled her wheelchair toward the rooftop terrace of Holloway Dynamics. The routine never changed. She ordered the same grilled chicken salad, sat beside the same planter filled with blooming lavender, and watched the city move beneath the afternoon sunshine. From a distance, she looked like a woman who had everything. She had built her company from a tiny rented office into a global business worth hundreds of millions. Magazines called her the Iron Visionary. Investors admired her fearless decisions. Young entrepreneurs dreamed of becoming like her. But none of those headlines mentioned the silence that followed her every lunch. Years earlier, a devastating highway accident had taken away the use of her legs and stolen the life of the men she had planned to marry. Recovery demanded more than surgeries and endless therapy. It demanded learning how to smile while strangers stared, how to lead meetings after people questioned whether she was still capable, and how to ignore the quiet pity hiding behind polite compliments. She fought harder than anyone knew, but success could not erase loneliness. Somewhere along the journey, people stopped seeing Marin the woman and only saw Marin the powerful CEO in the wheelchair. Her employees respected her deeply, perhaps too deeply. They assumed she wanted privacy. They feared interrupting her lunch or saying the wrong thing. Day after day, dozens walked past with trays in their hands, offering quick smiles before joining friends at other tables. Marin always answered with kindness, pretending she preferred the quiet. Inside, however, she wondered what it felt like to simply belong without titles, without admiration, without sympathy. One sunny Tuesday, construction crews were repairing a nearby office building. Among them was a hard-working electrician named Callum Reyes, a widowed father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Junie. Since school was closed for teacher training that day, Junie accompanied her father to work. She spent the morning sketching birds, clouds, and buildings while waiting patiently near the maintenance office. At lunchtime, Callum unpacked 2 simple sandwiches from an old lunch bag. Money was tight. Every dollar mattered since his wife had passed away after a long illness 2 years before. He often skipped buying lunch so Junie could have healthier meals at home. Despite the hardships, he never complained. He believed dignity wasn't measured by wealth but by how gently people treated one another. As father and daughter searched for a quiet place to eat, Junie noticed the elegant woman sitting alone near the flowers. Everyone else avoided the empty seats around her as though invisible signs warned them to stay away. Junie looked at her father with innocent confusion. Children often see truths adults overlook. Without waiting for permission, she walked toward the lonely table. Callum hurried behind her, embarrassed and worried they might be disturbing someone important. Before he could apologize, Junie smiled warmly and asked if they could sit nearby because the flowers were prettier from that side of the terrace. For a brief moment, Marin was speechless. No hesitation. No uncomfortable stare. No whispered judgment. Just a little girl asking to share the sunshine. She nodded with a genuine smile that surprised even herself. That lunch lasted barely 30 minutes, yet it felt richer than any executive banquet Marin had attended in years. Junie talked about her dream of becoming a wildlife photographer. She pointed excitedly at pigeons landing on nearby rooftops and described imaginary adventures for each one. Callum mostly listened, occasionally laughing at his daughter's endless imagination while apologizing for her curiosity. Marin found herself laughing too. Not the polite laugh she used during business meetings. A real laugh. One she hadn't heard from herself in far too long. When lunch ended, Callum thanked her for allowing them to join her. He assumed that would be the end of the encounter. The next day, however, Junie asked if they could eat on the rooftop again. Then the day after that. Soon, their shared lunches became an unexpected tradition. The conversations slowly revealed pieces of lives carefully hidden from the outside world. Callum admitted how overwhelming single parenthood sometimes felt. He worried constantly about paying bills, helping with homework, and being both father and mother to his daughter. Maren confessed that despite leading thousands of employees, she often returned to an empty penthouse where silence echoed louder than applause. Neither tried to solve the other's pain. They simply listened. Sometimes that is the greatest kindness anyone can offer. Employees began noticing something unusual. Their intimidating CEO smiled more often. Meetings became warmer. She started asking workers about their families, celebrating birthdays personally, and introducing mental health support programs throughout the company. Productivity increased, not because of stricter policies, but because people finally felt seen. One afternoon, Maren quietly watched Callum repairing damaged electrical wiring inside the building. His tools were worn, his uniform faded, yet every task was completed with extraordinary care. Curious, she learned he had repeatedly declined promotions because higher-paying supervisory jobs required longer travel, leaving less time with Junie. That discovery stayed with her. A week later, Holloway Dynamics announced a new facilities operations manager position created specifically for expanding company properties. The salary nearly doubled what Callum earned. Flexible hours allowed him to remain present in his daughter's life. When human resources offered him the job, Callum believed there had been a mistake. There hadn't. Maren had simply recognized excellence long before anyone else bothered to notice it. Yet the greatest surprise was still waiting. Months later, during the company's annual leadership celebration, Maren stepped onto the stage before hundreds of employees. Instead of discussing profits or future expansion, she spoke about loneliness. She admitted that despite achieving every professional dream, she had forgotten how healing ordinary friendship could be. She explained that true success meant creating places where nobody felt invisible, regardless of position, income, or physical ability. Then she invited Callum and Junie onto the stage. The audience stood in thunderous applause. Not because a CEO had promoted an employee, but because everyone finally understood the quiet lesson hidden behind countless lonely lunches. One child had crossed an invisible line adults refused to cross. One father had treated a stranger with simple respect instead of intimidation. Together, they reminded an entire company that kindness requires no permission. Inspired by their story, Holloway Dynamics launched community mentorship programs, inclusive hiring initiatives, and family support funds for employees facing hardship. Other businesses soon followed their example. What began with one shared lunch eventually transformed thousands of lives beyond those rooftop walls. As seasons changed,